Aliens have invaded Earth and possess the minds of humans.
It is the enemy. Don't forget it.
But when Melanie is inhabited by Wanderer, she refuses to let go. As the two connect, they search for Melanie's family in The Host.
Hi, I'm Kevin.
I'm Brenna.
And I'm Salim, and we're here to discuss The Host, based off the novel by Twilight scribe Stephenie Myer. We've all just seen it, so is it infectious?
The Host is a film about these parasites that have come and invaded Earth, and they've pretty much taken over every human. They take over their brain and kick out the human and just use the body. And there's these little pockets of human resistance left trying to fight them. And one of them is the lead character, Melanie, who ends up getting caught and gets implanted, but she's able to resist the will of her parasite. And they sort of become friends, and they go and wander off to try and find Melanie's family. The problem is, as soon as she wanders off to go find the family, the film just goes.
So does the story, right?
Yeah.
It's bad, because the first half, fantastic world that they set up. The aliens set up this whole new world where they take over the humans, but everything looks great. It's lush, it's green. So it's got this cool political undertone of, you know, when the aliens take over, everything becomes great because human nature is obviously a bit destructive, which I think is wonderful. But all this overly romantic dialogue it takes everything down 2 or 3 pegs.
I wonder if a love like that might play on someone's mind, heart. It might get somebody to do something they wouldn't ordinarily do. Maybe you're here because you do actually care about Jared and the kid.
The romance needed to be kind of the confection to the rest of it. It shouldn't have been the main focus. But unfortunately, because it's Stephenie Myer and her audience wants that, they want the whole romance thing. And it just becomes too much. And the thing is, too, I think with the trailers, they make it seem like there's going to be a little bit more action in it. And there is no action except for maybe a scene at the beginning when the car flips.
Everything that the aliens have is chrome. Their motorcycles, their ridiculously expensive Lotuses, which they somehow got in the budget and were able to crash one, which was really cool. And even their helicopters are chrome.
Yeah.
And these things seem like to be really exciting, but you're just like, oh, pretty chrome helicopter just flying around.
And now let's go back to our conversation.
And we're gonna go back to talking in the cave.
Yeah, and it's unfortunate because a lot of these flourishes elicit a little bit of laughter. For example, we have
store.
It just says store. It's supposed to be a department store with all the generic materials, but it just says store. And every time we see it, everybody's laughing. And I'm sure it's not intentional, but
it might be. I mean, it's pretty comedic just to have something labeled store.
Right, especially it was so big.
It
was just giant letters, sort of like IKEA, but it just says store instead. Right. But along with this these are problems with the storytelling, but there's also some problems with the world. Like, there's a really big problem with the logic of this world. You have these alien parasites that have come and infected everything, but the way that they infect is through very careful surgery on a passed out person. So how did the first aliens even get into the first humans?
What shall I call you?
Call me Wanderer.
So we should talk about Saoirse Ronan, who plays Melanie, the girl who gets taken over by the parasite. I thought she was really good in this.
Her performance is strong. She plays 2 different characters, and she has to have conversations with somebody who's not there, with the voice that's in her head.
Right.
So the movie is told over voiceover and through her talking to the voiceover. And it works. It looks like she's actually having a conversation with somebody.
yeah, I've liked Saoirse Ronan since Atonement. She's a great actress, especially here, because she has to play more or less 2 different characters. She has these reactions to what the voice in her head is saying, and sometimes it's laughing and sometimes it's sad. And it's interesting to see her go through these.
What side will you die?
Do it. I'd rather die.
It's impossible. You're human.
Along with Saoirse Ronan, we have Diane Kruger, who's playing the sort of villain of the film, the Seeker, who's trying to find her.
And of course, we know her from Inglourious Bastards. And here she has to play this alien who is taken over by her human ambition.
This role could be really over the top as her character loses control, and she does a good job of reining it in and keeping it from being crazy lady talking to herself.
This movie is directed by Andrew Niccol, who we know, of course, from movies like Gattaca and In Time. So we know he likes to really dive deep into these sci-fi worlds, which to me is the best part of this film, but all the romantic stuff is not in his wheelhouse, and it's obvious on screen.
It is absolutely depressing because this concept is so fascinating. This could be a really cool film.
I agree.
And I feel that he was sort of trapped or compelled to include all of the other stuff from the Stephanie Myer novel.
It felt like a really long CW pilot. Like really well made, but then there wasn't a lot going on because it was a lot of chit-chat. And I think on page it probably worked a lot better than it did on screen.
Again, if they would have cut just half of the romantic subplot, or just make it not as important, it could have been so much better.
You know what, they didn't even need to cut the subplot. They could have cut all the extraneous dialogue about the subplot. It could have existed, they just didn't need to talk about it as much.
It didn't need to be as important.
But you know what's funny is I think you're almost giving too much credit to this concept, because we've seen this concept 800 times. Every sci-fi movie about aliens coming to Earth is about them taking over the body, and then what happens, what do we do? This is nothing new.
True, but it's about the follow-through, and I thought the follow-through in the sci-fi aspect was pretty good.
True. The host has a great setup, but then it flounders for the last 2/3, and it gets really boring and pretty laughable. I say, skip it.
So the first half is fascinating, but the second half is really boring, and it's a really sad waste of a fascinating concept. So I say, skip it.
The host presents an intriguing world, which is unfortunately hampered by the numerous romantic subplots. Stream it.
Our votes add up to half a ticket, which is a skip it for the host. Cheers.
Cheers.
Store!
Store!
Sorry.
This worked too well.